Hey there, Internet friends. Trevor Starkey here with another episode of Trevor Trove Gaming Tuesday, where I kind of talk about what I've been playing. Basically, it's been Far Cry 5 all week. I managed to finish the main campaign Sunday night. Yeah, Sunday night. I overall really enjoyed the game. It has a lot of great fun gameplay elements. I love certain things of it. The story left me a little underwhelmed. And the main characters don't really seem to match the highest of the highs of kind of Far Cry villains from the past. But even that, like as I think on the game and I think on Far Cry's past, like we always kind of put the villains up on pedestals, but very often the villains are kind of like they make a big splash and they have like a couple really big moments, but then like compared to the rest of the game when you are just kind of playing around and going out and going crazy out in the wilderness and stuff, they're really only in a very small fraction of the game. It is almost reminiscent of Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII in a weird comparison, because when you like think about Final Fantasy VII and the story of that game, he is in very little of it, kind of in the big picture of things, but he makes such a big splash in the scenes that he is in, of course, with kind of Aerith and walking out of the Nibelheim fire and stuff like that. That he has so many iconic moments that you kind of end up remembering him, like in a way more than he's actually represented in the game. And I kind of think of Voss and Pagan Min in the same vein. Like both of them, like have really great moments in their respective games. But are definitely background characters in their own games compared to the mindless grunts that you just end up kind of mowing down and the animals that you end up, killing in both those games. And so here in Far Cry 5, you have Joseph Seed and his followers, his cult, of course, the Project Eden's Gate, the Peggies as they are colloquially called. His lieutenants, you have John Seed, Jacob Seed, and Faith, and so like they each kind of have their own little region of the game. I appreciate that the game is pretty much like completely opened up from the beginning. You go through the little like beginning tutorial island, and then you are off on your own. You can choose whichever region you want to go and start kind of progressing through. And progression is actually one of the things I really liked in this game. It's definitely probably a divisive take for a lot of people, but what I love about it is that it kind of forces you, it forces the story on you progression-wise. So one of the issues you can often run into in open-world games is you do like one story mission, and then you go and do like every possible side quest you can, and then by the time you get back to the story mission, you're like, man, this story really isn't going anywhere. It's because you added an extra, 10 hours in between the beats of the actual story. And here, it kind of forces you back to the story every now and then, because the game will effectively hijack your game to kind of take you onto a story mission as you progress through each of the lieutenant's regions. You're basically, every time you do a mission or liberate an outpost or save hostages or something like that, you build up resistance points in that particular of the three regions. And once you reach kind of certain benchmarks throughout, like that lieutenant will basically come find you wherever you are. They'll sick their goons on you, and they will kind of take you out of whatever you're doing and kind of stick you into a story level where you interact with them and you have to deal with them and you have to face them, as opposed to again, what we see in so many other open world games where you could go off and just do everything. You can go and do the weird, crazy stunt races and stuff like that that are in this game, and not touch the story, and then like all that time that they put into the main story and the main villains and characters ends up being kind of lost in the shuffle. So I really like that from a gameplay story pacing wise, they kind of force you down into those paths. The way I played it, just for reference, is I played all the way through John's area first, pretty much, and And then once I did that, I kind of went over into Faith's area, but then I didn't go all the way through Faith's area next and then up into Jacob's area, who's in the north. I kind of split my time a little bit between Faith and Jacob. That's still kind of the order I ended up beating them in, but I did a little bit of Faith's stuff, and then I went up into Jacob's stuff for a little bit, and kind of, so I got to see kind of that, okay, here's what it feels like if you just kind of stick in one area the whole time, and then here's what it feels like if you go into and kind of bounce around between some of the areas. So I really like that. I really like the kind of side characters that you can kind of, you go and do their side missions, and you bring them in, and they become your guns for hire, or your fangs for hire if they are one of the animal creatures and stuff like that. There's a lot of good, fun companion dialogue, especially if you like are running around with two companions. I like that sometimes they banter with one another, and how some of those interactions play out. The villains themselves, the antagonists, the seed cults and whatnot, I like them as antagonists, but eventually they do kind of all feel a little samey, and there's like in the context of like the religious cult aspect and the kind of doomsday philosophy that they're kind of espousing, they end up feeling so non-specific and samey that I liken it to kind of what Bray Wyatt had become in, if you watch wrestling at all. He just kind of spouts this nonsense gibberish about how he is the eater of worlds and stuff like that. And so often you're just like, okay, just get over with this segment. I felt that way very often, kind of playing through and like hopping into those cutscenes. So while I appreciate that the game kind of forced me into those cutscenes, I wish they had been more engaging and been more just specific in their storytelling. That's not to say, like, I disagree with the general kind of sense that's out there about, like, oh, this should have been, like, a big FU to Trump kind of game. Because I don't think it was that. I don't think it was ever really intended to be that. I described it after kind of first playing it, and it may have been in last week's video, but I described it as, like, people thought this was going to be like a taking down the alt-right or something like that, when really it's like an Eamon Bundy kind of standoff in Wyoming or whatever, amped up. Definitely amped up, but it's definitely not, bringing down the, like, a militaristic, democratically elected regime or something like that. It is like, these are just crazy people, and they've, got people in just the right places, at least, to kind of lock you away from outside help. So I definitely wouldn't say it's believable, but it at least buy it enough to kind of get engrossed in the game and invested in helping these people and saving their towns and stuff like that, liberating the outposts. I appreciate that the outposts kind of all have, like, they're not all just generic camp. Like, you will take out, like, you'll take over a lumber mill, or you'll take over, like, a resort or a gas station or something like that. They all kind of have an identity to them, so I appreciated that, and it made kind of, like, yeah, they're all still, like, filled with the samey kind of enemies, but I appreciated that they all gave me, like, a reason to kind of keep an eye on my surroundings in a different way, as opposed to what I've seen in Far Cry's past. Progression I like in that you basically find little prepper like shelters and stuff like that, bomb shelters and stuff. And usually with each one, you basically have to find the way into it, and so it's nice. It's like solving a nice little puzzle, and the reward at every one is a few perk points that you can assign to skills, as well as money. You also can get perk points by completing various challenges in the game, and a lot of them are simple, like kill so many people, skin so many animals, have your allies kill so many people, that kind of stuff. So that by the time I finished, I'd unlocked most of the skill trees in the game. Once you kind of have your perk points, you can figure out what you want to allocate them to, for health boosts, or an extra weapon slot, or carrying more ammunition, or stealth walking, or stealth running rather, and stuff like that. So it's kind of an evolution of the perk system and the level up system that they've had in years past. I admittedly haven't played any co-op, so I won't speak to any of that. But I really enjoyed just kind of my time in Hope County. I had a great time just kind of running around a lot of times and just figuring out the best ways. I mean, just like there's almost always something to uncover, over the next hill or something like that. Be it, a shrine that you need to blow up, or a silo or something like that, or just kind of like there are lots of goons in this game. I will say that there are just like Joseph Seed has a crazy army, which does bring me back to another one of my points. That's I won't get into spoiler territory or anything, but in terms of the story, I did get a little. Like, I was a little less disheartened that it's not purely like these people are following this guy because they believe in what he's saying and stuff. There are, like, other factors at play that he has. And I was like, that weakens him, I think, as a character because he's relying on crutches. But also, it's like, oh, well, I'm killing a whole bunch of people that maybe I shouldn't have been killing. Because, maybe they're not in complete control of their own actions and stuff like that. So that was, like, a little and I'm also not a crazy huge fan of the ending. It's undoubtedly a very divisive ending, I'm sure. I haven't really looked and seen other people talking about it, and I won't talk about it here, but I kind of, I rolled the credits and I was like, that's how it's ending? Okay. I mean, it's just not satisfying in a way that I wanted it to be satisfying. And I think it's intentionally not satisfying in that way, but it doesn't quite work for me. So yeah, those are a couple of my other minor issues with the game. But overall, the gameplay loop of going in, kind of loading up your weapons. I mean, you've always got ample supply of weapons and ammo and stuff like that. I appreciated once I was able to kind of run out there with like 4 weapons and stuff and craft remote explosives and stuff like that. I was able to just, pick people off with arrows, or if I was feeling like crazy, I would just take out like a rocket launcher and just shoot it off into a crowd of 10 enemies or something like that and just take them all out. So yeah, overall I had a good time with the game. It's definitely not without its flaws, and the antagonists, the game doesn't, ultimately I think story-wise and character-wise, that the game doesn't quite live up to the evocative imagery that like the cover promotes, and kind of what I think they initially were selling on the game, which is Joseph Seed and his kind of followers in a very Last Supper kind of pose. It doesn't reach something to that level. There are some great moments in there, and again, there's a lot of fun to be had throughout this game. But I ultimately was just underwhelmed in certain areas. But overall, I had a great time. I definitely recommend it, especially if you're a fan of the Far Cry kind of formula of games. This very much is okay, we're going to give you a ton of things to do, and you can just kind of check things off on your side quests, or you can just go and roam and take out outposts and that kind of stuff, or you can just fly around the county or boat around the county and that kind of stuff. So definitely recommend it. Let me know what your thoughts are on the game if you've played it in the comments below. As always, I've been your host, Trevor Starkey from TrevorTrove.com. You can follow me at SnarkyStarkey on Twitter. And until next time, from here at the Trove, treasure your friends.